remember, don't go in that wood. Family lives. What is this place? What? Oh, you have so much fun.
Don't mind if I do.
Only if they wish for something silly.
Wish they had someone else's one. It's just like you said, some charms and wonder. Grandma.
How we could get back to the city, it is the nest.
You wish to cross the lands.
Know all that because we just told you. No way I'm going down that.
Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into the magical world of the Magic Faraway Tree 2026, a fantasy adventure filled with imagination, family, friendship, and mysterious magical lands. In this video, we're going to explain the complete story of the movie in detail, taking you through the journey of the Thompson family as they leave their busy city life behind and move to the countryside, where their children discover something truly extraordinary hidden inside a mysterious forest. We'll follow Fran, Beth, and Joe as they encounter the magical Faraway Tree, meet unforgettable characters like Silky, Moonface, and the Saucepan Man, and travel through fascinating worlds filled with strange creatures, incredible adventures, unexpected dangers, and magical surprises. We'll explain how the children's choices create serious consequences, and how their journey ultimately brings the entire family closer together, along with the complete story explanation. We'll also review the movie, discuss its fantasy elements, characters, emotional moments, humor, visual imagination, and family-friendly themes. So, if you want to understand everything that happens in the Magic Faraway Tree from beginning to end, stay with us until the end, because this magical adventure is about to begin. The story of the Magic Faraway Tree begins far away from the mysterious woodland and magical worlds that will eventually transform the lives of the Thompson family. At the beginning, we are introduced to Tim and Polly Thompson, a married couple who have spent years trying to build a comfortable life for themselves and their 3 children. They live in the city, surrounded by modern technology, busy streets, work pressures, and the constant noise of everyday life. Their 3 children, Beth, Fran, and Joe, have grown up in this environment, and technology has become an enormous part of their daily routine. Beth, the eldest daughter, is old enough to understand that life is changing around her, but she is also particularly resistant to change when that change threatens the lifestyle she already knows. Joe, meanwhile, is fascinated by video games and spends much of his time immersed in digital worlds. The youngest child, Fran, is quieter and more withdrawn than her siblings. She has been mute for years, rarely communicating verbally with the people around her, and this silence has become an important part of the family dynamic. Even though Tim and Polly love all 3 children deeply, they have begun to realize that their family is becoming increasingly disconnected from one another. Everyone is physically together, but emotionally they often seem to be living in separate worlds. Polly is particularly important to the opening of the story because she represents the family's connection to modern technology, and also the moral conflict that will eventually push them toward a completely different way of life. She is an inventor and has been working on an advanced smart refrigerator for her company. At first, the project seems like a major professional achievement. Polly has invested a great deal of time and creativity into developing the machine, and she believes that the invention could make everyday life easier for ordinary people. The refrigerator is supposed to be intelligent, useful, and innovative, reflecting the increasingly technological world in which the Thompson family lives. Polly is proud of her work because she believes technology should be designed to improve people's lives, rather than control them. However, her excitement disappears when she discovers something disturbing about the company's plans for her invention. without properly informing customers. The company has secretly incorporated hidden cameras into the refrigerator. The cameras are intended to allow the company to spy on the people who purchase and use the product. For Polly, this crosses a serious ethical line. She may be an inventor, but she does not want her work to become a tool for invading people's privacy. Instead of accepting the decision or remaining silent simply because the project could benefit her career, Polly makes a difficult choice. She resigns from her job. Polly's decision becomes the first major turning point in the story because losing her job unexpectedly opens the door to a possibility that she and Tim have discussed for years. The couple have always dreamed of leaving the city behind and moving somewhere peaceful in the countryside. Their dream is not simply about finding a bigger house or escaping traffic. Tim and Polly imagine a completely different lifestyle, one in which their family can spend more time together, live closer to nature, and build something of their own. They have an idea of starting a homegrown tomato sauce business. Instead of working for large companies and depending on corporate decisions, they want to grow their own tomatoes, make their own sauce, and create a small family business. To Tim, Polly's resignation suddenly makes this dream feel possible. The timing is frightening because there is no guarantee that their new business will succeed, but it also feels like an opportunity they may never receive again. Tim is much more enthusiastic about the idea than the children are. He sees the countryside as a fresh beginning, a chance for the family to escape the unhealthy dependence on technology and rediscover a simpler life. Beth, however, immediately sees the move differently. For her, the countryside represents everything she does not want. She is leaving behind her familiar home, her friends, the city, entertainment, technology, and the lifestyle she understands. Joe is also reluctant because his video, games and electronic devices are an important part of his world. Although Fran does not express her feelings verbally, she is also affected by the uncertainty surrounding the move. Tim and Polly try to explain that this change will be good for everyone, but the children are not convinced. From their perspective, their parents are taking away the life they know and replacing it with something completely unfamiliar. The family eventually makes the decision to move. Their destination is a property in the countryside that Tim and Polly believe could become the perfect place for their dream. They imagine fields, fresh air, crops, and enough space to grow tomatoes. They picture themselves building a business from the ground up while spending more time together as a family. Their expectations, however, are about to collide with reality. When they finally arrive at the property, the children are confronted with a sight that makes their disappointment even worse. The place is not the comfortable countryside home they had imagined. Instead, it is a ramshackle old barn with none of the basic conveniences they are accustomed to. There is no electricity and no running water. The building needs extensive repairs before it can properly function as a home, let alone a successful family business. The contrast between the family's former life and their new surroundings is enormous. In the city, the children were surrounded by modern conveniences. They could turn on lights, use electronic devices, access entertainment, and enjoy all the comforts of a modern home. Now they are standing in an old building that appears almost unfinished. Tim and Polly attempt to remain optimistic, but even they understand that the situation is much more difficult than they expected. The farmers who sold them the property are kind people, and they recognize that the Thompsons have underestimated the work required. Instead of immediately demanding the full payment, the farmers agree to give the family several weeks to repair the barn and make it suitable for living. The purchase price is £20,000, and the Thompsons now have a limited amount of time to prove that they can turn this neglected property into a real home and a functioning business. This arrangement creates an additional source of pressure for the family. They are no longer simply moving to the countryside. They are taking a financial risk. Tim and Polly have committed themselves to a dream without knowing whether it will succeed. They need to repair the property, establish the farm, grow tomatoes, create the sauce, and eventually convince the farmers that they deserve to keep the place. For Tim, these challenges are part of the adventure. For Beth, they are evidence that the move was a terrible mistake. She does not see the romantic countryside life that her father sees. Instead, she sees a broken-down building in the middle of nowhere, far from everything familiar. Her frustration begins to grow. And this emotional distance between Beth and her parents becomes one of the most important elements of the story. While Tim and Polly focus on the practical problems of the property, something extraordinary is quietly happening nearby. The countryside surrounding the barn is not an ordinary place. Hidden within the woodland is something that none of the family initially knows exists. The magic faraway tree. The children have no idea that their arrival has brought them close to a world that exists beyond ordinary reality. Their parents are focused on repairing walls, organizing equipment, and preparing the land, while the forest seems to hold an entirely different story. This is where the movie begins to shift from a family drama about moving to the countryside into a fantasy adventure. Fran becomes the first member of the family to make a genuine connection with the magical world. One day, while she is outside, she encounters a fairy named Silky. Silky is not simply an ordinary fairy in the traditional sense. She is one of the magical inhabitants connected to the faraway tree. During their encounter, Silky accidentally drops her purse. Fran notices it and returns it to her. The simple act of kindness has a powerful effect on Silky. She is delighted that Fran has helped her, and the encounter creates an immediate bond between them. What makes the moment especially meaningful is that Fran, who has remained mute for years, experiences something emotionally powerful during the encounter. Her connection with Silky is innocent and genuine, based not on technology, money, or status, but simply on kindness. The significance of Fran speaking again cannot be underestimated. For years, silence has separated her from the world around her. Her family loves her, but they cannot fully understand what she is thinking or feeling because she rarely speaks. When she finally finds herself in a situation where she feels comfortable and connected, something inside her changes. The magical encounter gives her a reason to communicate. It is as though the fantasy world has reached a part of Fran that the ordinary world could not reach. Silky is therefore more than just a magical character. She becomes the first person outside the family to recognize something special in Fran. Silky is touched by Fran's kindness and decides that she deserves a special reward. Together with her friend, the angry pixie, she secretly visits Fran's room at night. The children are asleep, the new countryside home is quiet, and the magical visitors move through the darkness without the adults knowing. Silky and the angry pixie leave Fran an invitation. It is an invitation to come and have tea with them at the magic faraway tree. Along with the invitation comes a map that will guide Fran toward the mysterious woodland and the enormous tree hidden there. For Fran, this is an extraordinary opportunity. She has spent so much of her life isolated by her silence, and now someone has invited her into a secret world where imagination appears to be real. The next morning, Fran is faced with a decision. Her parents have warned the children not to wander away, particularly because the countryside is unfamiliar. Tim and Polly are concerned about their safety, and they want the children to remain close to the property. But Fran cannot stop thinking about the invitation. She wants to see Silky again, and she wants to discover whether the mysterious world on the map is real. Eventually, curiosity wins. Fran follows the map into the nearby woodland, leaving behind the ordinary world of the family home. As Fran travels deeper into the forest, the atmosphere around her begins to change. The ordinary countryside gradually gives way to something that feels almost dreamlike. The trees become larger and more mysterious, and the path seems to lead her toward a place that should not exist. Then Fran finally sees it, the magic faraway tree. It is enormous, ancient, and unlike any ordinary tree. Its branches seem to stretch far beyond what should be physically possible, disappearing upward into the clouds. The tree immediately feels like a doorway between worlds. Fran has no idea what she is about to discover, but she knows she has reached the destination described on the map. Fran climbs the tree and enters a magical realm above the clouds. This moment represents the true beginning of her adventure. The world she discovers is completely different from the countryside below. Here, the impossible seems normal. Magical beings live alongside one another, and the rules of ordinary reality do not apply in the same way. Fran is reunited with Silky, who welcomes her warmly. She also meets several of the faraway tree's most unusual residents, including Moonface, the Saucepan Man, Mr. What's-His-Nom, and Dame Washalot. Each character has a distinct personality. Adding humor and personality to the magical world, Moonface quickly becomes one of the most memorable figures Fran encounters. He is eccentric, energetic, and deeply connected to the Faraway tree. The children learn that the tree has a remarkable feature. A new magical land appears at the top every day. This means that the inhabitants never know exactly what they will discover. One day might bring a beautiful and harmless world, while another might bring a dangerous place filled with strange rules. The constantly changing lands make the Faraway tree an endless source of adventure. On this particular day, the land waiting at the top of the tree is the land of goodies. As soon as Fran enters it, she discovers a world that seems to have been created entirely from sweets. Huge chocolates, enormous candies, and other delicious treats surround her. For a child, it appears to be paradise. After everything Fran has experienced with the difficult move to the countryside, the land of goodies feels like the perfect escape. She can forget about the unfinished barn, her family's arguments, and the strange uncertainty of her new life. She simply enjoys the magical world around her. However, the Faraway tree's lands are never completely safe. The magical lands move and eventually rotate away from the tree, meaning visitors cannot stay indefinitely. Fran soon realizes that she must return before the land of goodies disappears from reach. What initially seemed like a wonderful playground suddenly becomes dangerous. Fran narrowly escapes being trapped there as the land rotates away from the tree. The experience teaches her an important lesson. The magical world may be beautiful and exciting, but it also has rules and dangers that she does not yet understand. Fran eventually returns home. When Tim and Polly realize that she has been away, they are understandably concerned. Fran tries to explain what she has seen, but her story sounds impossible. She talks about the enormous tree, the magical lands, Silky, Moonface, and the other strange inhabitants. To the adults, it sounds like an elaborate fantasy. They have just moved into a broken-down barn. They are struggling to establish a business, and they have countless practical problems to solve. The idea that their daughter has climbed a magical tree into a world above the clouds seems unbelievable. At first, nobody accepts Fran's story as reality. This creates another important, emotional moment for her because the magical world is the first place where she has felt completely understood. Yet the people she loves most cannot believe what she experienced. Still, Tim and Polly do not want to dismiss her completely. They decide that if Fran is determined to talk about the Faraway tree, then Beth and Joe should accompany her during playtime. Their hope is that the older children will keep an eye on Fran and perhaps discover what she has been talking about. Beth and Joe remain skeptical. Joe is more open to the possibility because his imagination has been heavily influenced by video games and fantasy worlds. But even he does not truly believe that a magical tree could exist in the real world. Beth is even less interested. She already dislikes the countryside and is frustrated with her parents, so she sees Fran's story as another strange complication. Nevertheless, the three children eventually agree to return to the woodland together. As they make their way through the forest, Beth and Joe begin to understand that Fran may not have been imagining everything. They find the magic Faraway tree and climb it together. Soon, the impossible becomes undeniable. The children are transported into the magical realm, and suddenly the world of fantasy that they thought existed only in Fran's imagination is standing directly in front of them. This changes everything. Beth can no longer simply complain that Fran is telling stories. Joe can no longer assume that the magical world is just another game. The three siblings are now connected to a secret universe that exists alongside their ordinary lives. Their first major adventure together will take them to another extraordinary destination, the land of birthdays. But before that happens, the children have already crossed an invisible line. They have discovered that their new countryside home is located next to a magical gateway, and the Faraway tree is not merely a strange landmark in the woods. It is a portal to countless worlds. For Fran, it is a place where she has found friendship and confidence. For Joe, it is a real-life adventure unlike any video game he has ever played. For Beth, however, the discovery will soon become much more complicated, because her frustration with the family's new life is about to influence one of the most important events in the entire story. The first part of the story, therefore, establishes the central conflict of the movie, the struggle between the ordinary, modern world and the imaginative world hidden just beyond it. Tim and Polly want their family to escape a life dominated by corporate pressure and technology, while their children initially want to remain connected to the world they already understand. Yet the countryside contains something that neither side expected. The magic Faraway tree gives the children a place where imagination becomes reality, and through that magical doorway, the Thompson family will slowly rediscover something they have been losing for years, the ability to experience life together. But before the family can truly understand the gift they have been given, they must face the consequences of their choices, and Beth's dissatisfaction will soon lead to a wish that changes everything. After Fran, Beth, and Joe discover that the magic Faraway tree is real, the entire world around them begins to feel different. Until this point, Beth has been convinced that moving to the countryside was a terrible decision made by her parents, but now she has been forced to accept something she never expected. There really is a magical world hidden inside the nearby woodland. Joe, on the other hand, is fascinated by everything he sees. His experience with video games has trained him to understand strange environments, unusual characters, and impossible challenges. So although the Faraway tree is far more incredible than anything he has encountered on a screen, he quickly becomes interested in exploring it. Fran is the happiest of the three because she has already formed a friendship with Silky and has experienced the feeling of being welcomed into a world where she can communicate freely. The siblings begin their journey together, climbing through the enormous branches of the tree and learning more about the strange rules that govern the magical lands. What makes the Faraway tree especially exciting is that no adventure is ever exactly the same. A new land arrives at the top of the tree every day, and each land has its own inhabitants, rules, dangers, and surprises. The children soon learn that entering these places can be wonderful, but it can also become dangerous if they fail to understand how the magical world works. The next destination for the children is the Land of Birthdays, a place that seems almost perfectly designed for children. Instead of being frightened by the unfamiliar environment, the siblings are welcomed by birthday elves who make them feel as though they have entered a giant celebration. Everything about the land is colorful, cheerful, and filled with the atmosphere of a birthday party. The birthday elves explain that they have the ability to grant each child one wish. To Fran, Joe, and Beth, this sounds like an incredible opportunity. A wish can mean anything. They could ask for something they desperately want, change an aspect of their lives, or perhaps solve one of the problems that has been troubling their family since they moved to the countryside. However, the children are inexperienced with magic, and none of them fully understands how seriously their wishes should be treated. Beth is the first to make a decision that will have consequences far beyond what she expects. Her biggest problem is not the magical world itself, but the fact that she wants to return to her old life. She misses the city, the comforts of home, and the familiar environment she had before her parents decided to move. She is also frustrated by the amount of attention her parents are giving to their tomato business. From Beth's perspective, the family has sacrificed everything familiar for a risky dream that may not work. She believes that if the tomato business fails, her parents will have no choice but to abandon the countryside and return home. So when the birthday elves offer her a wish, she makes an offhanded request. She wishes for Tim's tomato sauce business to fail. She does not make the wish because she wants to hurt her father. She makes it because she thinks it will solve the problem that has made her unhappy. In her mind, the wish will simply cause the business to collapse, and then the family will return to the city. But magic does not care about intentions in the same way people do. A careless wish can create consequences that the person making it never imagined. Joe and Fran are also given opportunities to make wishes, but their choices are far more playful. Joe, fascinated by his new surroundings and influenced by his love of video games, uses his wish to become a video game character. For him, the idea is exciting. He has spent so much time imagining himself inside digital worlds that becoming an actual game-like character seems like the ultimate adventure. Fran uses her wish to gain a different voice, which is particularly meaningful because she has spent years unable to speak normally. Her wish reflects her desire to communicate and experience herself differently. Unfortunately, none of the children realizes that wishes in this magical world may not always produce the perfect results they imagine. The birthday elves cannot simply undo the consequences of a wish themselves, so the children are directed toward another strange character who may be able to help them. They are sent to the basement to meet Mr. and Boom Boom. The very name suggests that this character is unusual, and the children soon discover that he is a loud, intimidating figure with his own demands. Mr. and Boom Boom possesses the ability to reverse wishes, which gives the children hope that their mistakes can be corrected. However, he is not willing to help them for free. Instead, he wants Silky as payment. For Fran, this is unacceptable. Silky was the first magical being to show her genuine kindness, and Fran refuses to allow her friend to be taken away simply because the children made careless wishes. The siblings therefore find themselves in a dangerous situation. They entered the land of birthdays expecting a fun magical adventure, but now they are forced to protect Silky and find a way out. The children eventually manage to rescue Silky and escape from the land of birthdays. Their adventure teaches them something important about the magical world. Every magical gift comes with responsibility. They cannot simply treat the Faraway tree like a game in which mistakes can always be reversed. The children have already seen how quickly a harmless decision can create a serious problem. Most importantly, Beth's wish remains unresolved. The consequences of her wish have not yet appeared, but the audience understands that something has been set into motion. Beth herself may temporarily forget about the wish, but the magic has not forgotten it. Back at the countryside home, life continues to change in ways the children did not expect. Tim and Polly begin working seriously on their plan to grow tomatoes and make their own sauce. They repair the barn as much as possible, work with the farm equipment, and begin turning the neglected property into something that resembles a functioning farm. The work is difficult and exhausting, but for the first time since arriving, the family begins to develop a routine. Instead of spending all their time on electronic devices, the children have more opportunities to explore outside, help their parents, and interact with one another. The magical adventures also encourage them to use their imaginations again. The family is slowly becoming closer, even though nobody realizes how much the Faraway tree is contributing to this transformation. Fran, in particular, changes significantly. Before meeting Silky, she had been almost completely silent. Now she has found a place where she feels comfortable expressing herself. Her siblings begin to see her differently as well. She is no longer simply the quiet youngest child who needs to be protected. She becomes an active participant in the family's adventures. She is brave, curious, and compassionate, and her friendship with Silky gives her confidence. Joe also begins to spend less time thinking about his games and more time experiencing real adventures. The magical world gives him the excitement he once searched for on a screen. Instead of watching imaginary characters perform impossible actions, he is now part of an impossible world himself. Beth's transformation is slower because she is still carrying resentment toward her parents. She continues to believe that the move was unfair and that her parents have placed their own dreams above the children's happiness. However, spending time with Joe and Fran and experiencing the Faraway tree begins to break down some of her resistance. She sees her siblings becoming happier and more imaginative, and she notices that Tim and Polly are genuinely trying to make the new life work. The family is not perfect, but there is more warmth between them than there was in the city. Beth begins to recognize that perhaps her parents did not move simply because they wanted to control the family. They moved because they wanted to create something better. The tomato business becomes the central focus of the family's new life. Tim and Polly put enormous effort into growing the tomatoes, and slowly their work begins to show results. The plants grow, the farm becomes more organized, and the possibility of producing their own sauce begins to feel real. Tim is especially excited. He sees the business not just as a way to earn money but as proof that the family can build something together. He dreams of opening the farm to the village, sharing their product with local people, and finally proving that their decision to leave the city was worthwhile. Polly supports him, although she is also aware of the risks. She has already sacrificed her corporate career because of her principles, so the success of the tomato business becomes an important part of her new identity. However, the family receives another, unexpected development when Beth's grandmother becomes involved. Beth had secretly sent a letter to her grandmother, asking her to come and take the children away from the countryside. Her grandmother is Polly's mother, and unlike Polly, she is described as unscrupulous and deeply connected to the world of business and London. She represents another version of the life Polly has tried to escape. When the grandmother receives Beth's letter, she sees an opportunity. Rather than simply comforting her grandchildren, she arrives with an agenda of her own. Her presence threatens the fragile happiness that the Thompsons have begun to build. The grandmother makes it clear that she is not going to allow the children to remain indefinitely in a situation she considers unsuitable. She sets a deadline for Tim and Polly. The tomato sauce business must succeed, otherwise she will take the children back to London with her. This creates enormous pressure on the family. Tim and Polly now have to prove that their dream can actually work. Their new life is no longer simply a personal choice. Their ability to stay together as a family is tied to the success of the farm. Tim responds to the pressure by becoming even more determined. Instead of giving up, he decides to organize a grand opening for the tomato sauce business. The festival will be a chance to show the villagers what the Thompsons have created. It will also be the moment when the farmers who sold them the property can see whether the family is capable of making the farm successful. Tim begins planning the event with enthusiasm. Polly works alongside him, and the children become involved as well. For the first time, the entire family appears to be working toward the same goal. But underneath this hopeful preparation is the invisible consequence of Beth's earlier wish. The audience knows that Beth wished for the tomato business to fail. She has almost forgotten about the wish because so much has happened since the land of birthdays, the magical adventure, the new friendships, the farm, and the arrival of her grandmother have all distracted her. But the wish remains active. As the grand opening approaches, Beth begins to sense that something is wrong. She sees how hard her parents are working and how much the business means to them. Her feelings begin to change. What once seemed like a harmless way to escape the countryside now looks like a terrible mistake. Beth starts to understand the emotional cost of her decision. Tim has not been trying to ruin her life. He has been trying to create a better future for the family. Polly gave up a successful career because she refused to participate in something she believed was wrong. Their move to the countryside was not an act of selfishness. It was their attempt to build a life based on family, independence, and honesty. Beth's wish, therefore, is no longer simply about a business. If the business fails, her parents' dream will collapse. The farmers may take back the property, and the grandmother may take the children away. The consequences could divide the family permanently. As the grand opening draws closer, the Thompson children continue visiting the Faraway tree and learning about its many inhabitants. The magical world becomes a parallel part of their lives. They can spend the day helping their parents on the farm and then enter a world of fairies, talking creatures, strange lands, and impossible adventures. This contrast is one of the central ideas of the story. The children have not completely abandoned the modern world, but they have discovered that imagination can provide something technology cannot. The Faraway tree gives them opportunities to cooperate, face challenges, and experience wonder together. Moonface and the other inhabitants also become increasingly important to the children. They treat the Thompsons as friends rather than outsiders. Fran's relationship with Silky becomes especially strong, and the children begin to feel that the Faraway tree is almost like another home. The magical characters have no idea how complicated the children's ordinary family situation has become, but their friendship provides emotional support when the children need it most. The Faraway tree is not simply a place where children go to have fun. It becomes a place where they learn lessons about trust, responsibility, courage, and family. Meanwhile, Tim and Polly continue preparing for the festival. The tomatoes are growing well, and everything appears to be heading toward success. Tim becomes increasingly confident that the family will prove everyone wrong. Polly is proud of what they have accomplished together. Even Beth begins to feel a sense of excitement about the festival. Although she is also increasingly worried about what her wish might do, she has not yet found a way to reverse it. The children know that magic exists, but they have no idea how to undo a wish that has already been made. Then the day of the grand opening finally arrives. The family has worked for weeks to reach this moment. The village is preparing to celebrate, and the tomato farm is ready to become the center of attention. Tim is excited and nervous. Polly stands beside him, proud of the life they have created. The children are present as well, and Beth watches everything with a growing sense of guilt. She knows that something terrible could happen because of her wish. Suddenly, the consequences arrive. The tomatoes begin to fail. What should have been a successful harvest turns into a disaster. The tomatoes become rotten and completely unusable. The beautiful crops that Tim and Polly worked so hard to grow are ruined. Their plans for the grand opening appear to be collapsing before their eyes. The family's dream of creating a successful tomato sauce business is suddenly in danger. For Tim, the failure is devastating. He cannot understand how everything could have gone so wrong so quickly. Polly is equally shocked. The farmers are watching, the village is waiting, and the grandmother now has every reason to believe that the business cannot succeed. The children are confronted with the reality of what has happened. Beth immediately knows the truth. Her wish has come true. The moment is painful because Beth never intended to destroy her family's happiness. She only wanted to return to the city. Now she sees that her wish has caused real damage. Her parents' hard work has been destroyed. Her siblings are affected, and the future of the family is uncertain. Instead of feeling victorious, Beth feels ashamed. She finally understands that wanting something for herself without considering how it would affect everyone else was a mistake. This realization marks the beginning of Beth's transformation. Earlier, she wanted the magical world to solve her problems. Now she realizes that she must take responsibility for the consequences of her own actions. She cannot simply blame the birthday elves or the magic. She made the wish herself. Therefore, she decides that she must find a way to reverse it. Beth turns to Joe and Fran. The three siblings now have a common goal. They must return to the magic Faraway tree, find a way to undo Beth's wish, and save their families' tomato business before the grandmother takes them back to London. The situation is more urgent than ever. The children have learned that the magical world contains many different lands, and somewhere among them may be the solution they need. As they prepare to leave, Beth's attitude is completely different from when she first entered the Faraway tree. She is no longer exploring because she wants an escape from her family. She is entering the magical world because she wants to protect them. Her journey has changed from selfishness to responsibility. Joe is ready to help, and Fran, who has developed remarkable confidence through her friendship with Silky, is ready to lead them into another adventure. The siblings remember hearing about a land of spells, a place where magic can be used to change or reverse things. Dame Washalot had mentioned it earlier, and now that information becomes their best hope. If they can reach the land of spells, perhaps they can find a spell capable of reversing Beth's wish, but getting there will not be easy. The Faraway tree is filled with unpredictable lands, and the children do not know what dangers they will face along the way. Their mission therefore becomes the central objective of the next stage of the story. They must travel through unfamiliar magical territories, find the right spell, and return home before the damage becomes permanent. Along the way, they will discover that their greatest strength is not any individual magical ability, but their ability to work together as siblings. Beth must learn humility, Joe must use his imagination in a new way, and Fran must rely on the courage she has developed since meeting Silky. Part 2 ends with the children once again approaching the magic Faraway tree, but this time their adventure has a much greater purpose. They are not simply visiting a magical world for entertainment. They are entering it to save their family. Beth carries the burden of knowing that the disaster is her fault, while Joe and Fran stand beside her rather than abandoning her. The Faraway tree rises above them, its branches disappearing into the clouds, and somewhere beyond those branches lies the mysterious land of spells. The siblings begin their journey with hope, but they have no idea that the path ahead will take them into strange worlds, dangerous territory, and eventually a dark land ruled by a terrifying figure. Their quest to reverse one careless wish is about to become the greatest adventure of their lives. After the disastrous failure of the tomato harvest, Beth can no longer hide from the consequences of her decision. The excitement surrounding the grand opening has disappeared almost instantly, replaced by disappointment and confusion. Tim and Polly have spent weeks transforming the neglected property into a working farm, and now their most important crop has become rotten and useless. To the adults, the failure looks like an unfortunate agricultural disaster, but Beth knows there is something more behind it. Her wish in the land of birthdays has come true exactly as she feared. She had wished for her father's tomato sauce business to fail so that the family would have to leave the countryside. But she never understood how painful that failure would actually be. Watching her father stand among the ruined tomatoes makes her realize that her wish was not a harmless shortcut. She has damaged something that her parents built with genuine love and determination. At the same time, her grandmother's deadline is still hanging over the family. If the business cannot succeed, the grandmother intends to take the children back to London, meaning the family could lose both their new home and the life they have slowly begun to create together. Beth's guilt becomes the motivation for the next stage of the adventure. Instead of blaming the magical world, she accepts that she was responsible for the wish. This is a major change in her character. Earlier, Beth viewed the countryside as a prison and believed that everything wrong with the family's situation was caused by her parents. She wanted someone else to fix her problem. Now she understands that her own choice has made the situation worse. She tells Joe and Fran what happened and admits that she needs their help. The siblings could easily become angry with her, but instead they decide to work together. Joe understands that mistakes can happen, especially in a world where magical wishes are real, while Fran's close relationship with the magical inhabitants gives the children confidence that there must be a solution somewhere inside the faraway tree. The children remember that Dame Washalot once mentioned a land of spales. If there is a place in the magical world where spales are kept, it may contain something capable of reversing Beth's wish. Their objective therefore becomes clear. They need to find the land of spales, obtain the correct reversal spell, and return home before it is too late. The problem is that the magical lands do not operate according to a normal map. A new land arrives at the top of the faraway tree every day, and the children cannot simply choose their destination and walk there. They must discover how to travel between the lands. Fortunately, the strange community living inside the tree knows more about the magical world than the children do, and the siblings begin asking questions and searching for information. Their first important destination is the land of know-it-alls. The name alone suggests that this is a place where knowledge is valued above everything else. The children hope that the inhabitants will know how to reach the land of spales. When they arrive, they encounter a world populated by people who seem to possess answers to almost every question. The atmosphere is very different from the land of goodies or the land of birthdays. Instead of being focused on food or celebration, this land is built around information, facts, and endless explanations. For Beth, the place is useful because she finally has a serious question that needs an answer. For Joe, it is also fascinating because he enjoys solving problems and discovering how unfamiliar systems work. Fran remains focused on the goal and keeps the group moving forward. The children eventually meet the Great Know-All, a character who possesses an enormous amount of information about the magical lands. They explain their situation and ask how they can reach the land of spales. The Great Know-All tells them that the answer is not simply a path through the tree. Instead, they need to use an unusual method of transportation. In another room there is an aeroplane that can be used to fly between the magical lands. For ordinary children, piloting an aeroplane would seem impossible, especially one traveling through a world above the clouds. But Joe's extensive experience with video games suddenly becomes extremely useful. He has spent countless hours learning how virtual controls work, and although a real magical aircraft is very different from a game, his confidence with simulated flying gives him an advantage. The children reach the aeroplane and prepare for the next stage of their mission. Joe takes control, using what he knows about virtual flight to guide the aircraft. Beth and Fran remain close by, ready to help if anything goes wrong. The journey between the magical lands is unlike anything the children have ever experienced. They are no longer simply climbing through the branches of the faraway tree. They are flying through a magical sky where different lands can appear like strange islands floating in an enormous world. The landscape below them constantly changes, reminding them that the rules of this universe are completely different from those of their ordinary home. As they travel, the children begin to understand how important teamwork has become. Joe provides the technical confidence needed to control the plane. Beth focuses on their mission, and Fran contributes the emotional strength that keeps them together. Earlier in the story, the siblings often represented different attitudes toward life. Beth was frustrated, Joe was absorbed in technology, and Fran was isolated by her silence. Now those differences are becoming strengths. Joe's fascination with video games gives him skills that unexpectedly help in the real world. Beth's determination helps keep the group focused. Fran's compassion and courage help them maintain their connection to the magical inhabitants. Eventually, they reach the land of Spales. The land is unlike anything they have encountered before. Instead of ordinary objects, the environment is filled with magical items, mysterious ingredients, enchanted objects, and merchants who understand the power of Spales. The children know that they cannot simply take what they need. They must persuade someone to give them the specific spell capable of reversing Beth's wish. The problem is that the merchant who possesses the spell does not immediately agree to hand it over. The children have no money or conventional bargaining power that would convince the merchant to help them. Their only real advantage is their sincerity and their ability to work together. Fran becomes central to the solution. Rather than trying to force the merchant to cooperate, she encourages her siblings to use something that has become increasingly important throughout their journey: their connection as a family. The children perform a family song together, using their voices to create a moment of genuine warmth. For Fran, this moment is particularly meaningful because speaking and expressing herself has been such an important part of her journey. She once struggled to communicate, yet now she is helping lead her siblings through a magical world. The song touches the merchant, who recognizes that the children are not seeking the spell for selfish reasons. They are trying to repair a mistake and save their family. Moved by their sincerity, the merchant finally agrees to give them the spell. The children have achieved the first major objective of their quest. They now possess the magical solution they need, but the journey home is far from over. They still have to return to the tomato farm before the grand opening. Disaster becomes irreversible. They also have to travel through the unpredictable lands of the Faraway tree, and the magical plane is not guaranteed to take them directly back to safety. As they begin their return journey, the children are filled with relief. Beth especially feels hopeful, because the spell represents a chance to correct her mistake. For the first time since the tomatoes were destroyed, she believes that her family might be saved. However, the magical world has one more challenge waiting for them. Their plane is suddenly waylaid and forced into a dark and unfamiliar land. The atmosphere changes immediately. The cheerful and colorful feeling of the earlier lands disappears, replaced by a much more intimidating environment. The children soon realize that they have entered a land ruled by a strict and frightening headmistress named Dame Snap. Dame Snap is completely different from the friendly magical characters the children have encountered before. She rules her land through discipline, fear, and rigid rules. She runs a school where children are expected to obey without question. When Beth, Joe, and Fran arrive, they immediately become targets, because they are outsiders and because they do not understand the rules of the land. Dame Snap captures them and forces them to attend her school. The children are not interested in staying there, especially because every minute they spend in this dark land brings them closer to missing their chance to save the farm. Dame Snap's school is deliberately oppressive. The children are expected to sit through lessons, follow instructions, and obey every command. For Beth, this is particularly frustrating because she has finally developed a sense of responsibility and urgency. She knows that she has to return home, yet now she is trapped in a place where she has no control. Joe initially tries to find a practical way out, while Fran looks for opportunities to use kindness or communication. But Dame Snap has designed her school to prevent children from escaping. Every rule is enforced, and disobedience is punished. The siblings realize that simply trying to run away will probably fail. They therefore decide to use Dame Snap's own rules against her. If they cannot escape by behaving properly, perhaps they can create a situation where they are sent somewhere else. The children deliberately misbehave during class, causing enough trouble that Dame Snap assigns them detention. At first, This seems like a brilliant plan. They assume that detention will take them away from the classroom and perhaps give them an opportunity to escape the school. Their strategy demonstrates how much the children have changed. Instead of panicking, they are now capable of thinking together and creating a plan under pressure. Unfortunately, the children discover that Dame Snap's idea of detention is much more severe than they expected. Detention is not simply sitting in an empty classroom or writing lines. It is effectively imprisonment. The children are locked away in a prison-like area where escape is even more difficult. Their clever plan has backfired. Instead of gaining freedom, they have placed themselves in an even more dangerous position. The reversal spell is still with them, but they cannot use it if they cannot get home. This setback forces the siblings to pause and reflect on everything that has happened. Trapped together, they begin talking more openly than they have before. Their conversations reveal how much their journey has changed them. Beth admits the extent of her guilt and explains that she never intended for the tomato farm to be destroyed. Joe reassures her that they are going to find a way out. Fran, meanwhile, reminds them that they are still together, and as long as they remain united, there is a possibility of escaping. Their situation is frightening, but their bond has become stronger. It is during this moment of imprisonment that the children learn something unexpected about their father. The discussion eventually reveals that Tim once visited the magic Faraway tree himself when he was a child. This revelation changes the way the children see their father. Until now, they believed that the magical world was something they had discovered independently. They never imagined that Tim had a connection to it. Suddenly, the Faraway tree is no longer simply a secret belonging to the children. It is part of their family's history. The children begin asking questions about Tim's childhood. They realize that their father may have experienced the same magical adventures they are now experiencing. This creates an emotional connection between generations. Tim has always encouraged them to enjoy the countryside and use their imaginations, but they now understand that his enthusiasm may come from personal memories. Perhaps he remembers the Faraway tree not as a fantasy but as a real place that shaped him when he was young. The revelation also reaches the magical inhabitants. Moonface learns that the children are connected to someone he once knew. The name Timmy carries emotional significance for him. To Moonface, this is not just another group of children passing through the tree. The boy he once knew has grown up, started a family, and somehow returned to the magical world through his own children. This discovery touches Moonface deeply and gives him an even stronger reason to help the siblings escape. Moonface begins thinking of a plan. The children are trapped in Dame Snap's prison, and ordinary methods of escape have failed. But Moonface understands the magical world better than the children do. He knows that the Faraway tree has strange rules, secret pathways, and opportunities that ordinary people might overlook. The fact that Tim has returned through his children creates a sense of unfinished history. Moonface does not want the Thompson children to remain trapped, especially because they are carrying a spell that could save their family. While the children wait for their opportunity, the emotional stakes become clearer. Beth's original desire to escape the countryside has completely changed. She no longer wants to return to the city at any cost. She wants to save the home her parents have created. Joe, who once cared mostly about technology and games, is now using his abilities to help his siblings in a real-world adventure. Fran, who once struggled to speak, is now one of the strongest emotional forces in the group. The magical journey has brought out qualities in each child that were hidden beneath their ordinary routines. Dame Snap, however, remains determined to keep them under control. The children must therefore depend on their own intelligence and the help of their magical friends. Their situation becomes a test of patience and courage. They have already crossed multiple magical lands, obtained the reversal spell, and survived dangerous situations. But the final obstacle is proving unexpectedly difficult. The prison seems designed to make them feel powerless. Yet the children have learned that the most difficult problems can often be solved by thinking differently. The knowledge that Tim once visited the Faraway tree becomes the key to their hope. Moonface's emotional connection to Tinny gives him a personal reason to act, and the children begin to believe that they are not alone. Somewhere beyond the prison walls, their magical friends are preparing to help them. The siblings now have to wait for the right moment. knowing that the success of their entire mission depends on their ability to escape. Meanwhile, back at the farm, the situation is becoming increasingly urgent. Tim and Polly are dealing with the consequences of the ruined tomatoes, while the grandmother remains, ready to take control of the children's future if the business fails. They have no idea that the children are fighting through a magical world to save them. Tim may not remember every detail of his childhood connection to the Faraway tree, but the audience now understands that his past and his children's present are connected, in a way that will eventually bring the story full circle. The siblings' journey has therefore reached a critical stage. They have found the spell they need, but possession of the spell means nothing if they cannot return home. They are trapped in Dame Snap's dark school, their time is running out, and the magical world around them is becoming more dangerous. Yet their bond is stronger than ever. Beth has learned responsibility. Joe has learned to use his talents for something beyond entertainment. And Fran has discovered her own voice and courage. Most importantly, they have learned that family is not something to escape from when life becomes difficult. It is something to protect. As the children wait inside the prison, Moonface's plan begins to take shape. The magical friend who once welcomed Fran into the Faraway tree is now preparing to rescue all three siblings. The discovery that they are Timmy's children has transformed the situation from a simple adventure into something deeply personal. The past has returned to the present, and the magical world is preparing to help the Thompson family once again. The children may not yet know exactly how they will escape, but they refuse to give up. Somewhere ahead lies the path back to the tomato farm. The reversal spell must be used, and Beth must finally correct the mistake that started the entire crisis. The adventure that began as a child's wish to escape the countryside has become a journey about taking responsibility, protecting loved ones, and understanding that even the most ordinary family can have extraordinary connections to a magical world. And with Moonface preparing his plan, the siblings are closer than ever to discovering the truth about their father's childhood and finding their way out of Dame Snap's prison. The story continues with Beth, Joe, and Fran trapped inside Dame Snap's prison, carrying the reversal spell that could save their family but unable to reach home. What began as a simple mission to repair Beth's mistake has now become a dangerous race against time. The children have already traveled through several magical lands, discovered the land of spells, obtained the spell they need, and then lost their freedom when their plane was forced into Dame Snap's territory. Their situation seems hopeless because Dame Snap controls the school and expects every child under her authority to obey her strict rules. Yet the siblings have learned something important during their adventures. When they work together, even a seemingly impossible problem can sometimes be solved. They are frightened, but they are no longer the same children who first arrived in the countryside. Beth has begun to understand responsibility. Joe has learned to use his imagination and gaming skills in practical situations. And Fran has developed confidence through her friendship with Silky and the other magical inhabitants. Their greatest advantage is the bond between them, and that bond becomes even more important as they wait for a chance to escape. The discovery that their father Tim once visited the magic Faraway tree changes the emotional meaning of their entire adventure. Until this point, the children had thought of the tree as a secret world that they had accidentally discovered. After moving to the countryside, now they realize that the connection goes back much further. Their father had apparently experienced the same magical place when he was a child. This explains why Tim seems so comfortable with the idea of imagination, adventure, and the countryside, even when the rest of the family struggles to understand his enthusiasm. It also means that Moonface is not simply helping three random children. He is helping the children of someone he once knew as Timmy. When Moonface realizes that the little boy from his memories has grown into a father, the discovery affects him deeply. He sees the Thompson children as a continuation of a friendship from long ago. Moonface decides that the children cannot be left in Dame Snap's prison. He begins working on a plan to help them escape, using his knowledge of the Faraway tree and its unusual magical rules. The children do not know every detail of his plan, but they understand that they have to remain patient and ready. Meanwhile, Dame Snap continues to impose her strict authority. Her school is designed around obedience, and she has no sympathy for children who refuse to follow her rules. The siblings therefore have to be careful. A direct confrontation could make their situation even worse, so they wait for an opportunity to act inside the prison. Beth continues to struggle with guilt. She thinks about the tomato farm, her parents, and the moment when the tomatoes turned rotten. She remembers how excited Tim had been about the grand opening and how proud Polly was of the progress they had made. Beth finally understands that the countryside was not the enemy. Her own frustration had prevented her from seeing what her parents were trying to accomplish. The family had left the city because Polly wanted to live according to her principles, and Tim wanted to build something independent. They had not abandoned the children. They had invited them into a new life. Beth realizes that if the spell succeeds, she cannot return to behaving as she did before. She needs to become more responsible and learn to think about how her actions affect other people. Joe tries to keep everyone's spirits up. His experience with video games has taught him that even when a situation seems impossible, there may be hidden paths or unexpected solutions. He begins thinking about the prison almost like a level in a game. Instead of simply asking how they can physically break out, he studies the environment and looks for patterns. He observes the guides, the doors, the rules, and the routines. This way of thinking becomes useful because magical worlds often operate according to unusual systems. The children realize that they may not need to defeat Dame Snap directly. They only need to find the right weakness in her system. Fran plays an equally important role. She is not as interested in planning escape routes as Joe, but her emotional connection with the magical inhabitants gives her a different kind of strength. Fran has learned that kindness can open doors that force cannot. Her friendship with Silky began because she returned a lost purse, and that small act of kindness changed her life. She remembers that lesson now. The children may be trapped, but they are not without friends. Somewhere outside the prison, Silky, Moonface, and the other inhabitants of the Faraway tree may be looking for a way to help. The opportunity finally arrives when Moonface's plan begins to unfold. The details of the escape depend on the strange nature of the Faraway tree, where ordinary physical rules are not always reliable. The children are able to take advantage of the confusion created around Dame Snap's school. Their earlier experience with detention also helps them understand how the school operates. They know where they are supposed to be, what rules they are expected to follow, and how Dame Snap responds when students disobey. Instead of fighting their way out, they use the structure of the school against itself. The plan requires courage and timing, but the siblings are ready. As the escape begins, the children move quickly. They have to avoid being caught again, and they cannot afford to lose the reversal spell. Beth keeps the spell safe while Joe helps navigate their route, and Fran stays alert for any sign of danger. The experience is frightening because they know that one mistake could send them back into prison. Yet the children have developed a confidence that was missing earlier in the story. They now know how to react when things go wrong. Instead of immediately panicking, they communicate with one another and continue moving forward. The escape also reinforces one of the movie's central themes. The children do not succeed because one of them is stronger than everyone else. They succeed because each sibling contributes something different. Beth has learned leadership through responsibility. Joe contributes problem-solving skills. Fran contributes courage, empathy, and a connection to the magical world. Their differences no longer divide them. Instead, those differences allow them to function as a team. Once they are free from Dame Snap's immediate control, the children must make their way back toward the Faraway tree. The journey is still dangerous because the magical lands continue changing. The children have no guarantee that the same route they used before will remain available. They also know that time is running out back home. The tomato farm is still in trouble, and their grandmother is prepared to take them away if the business cannot recover. Their mission has therefore become a race against both magical obstacles and real-world consequences. As they travel, the children reflect on everything they have experienced since moving to the countryside. At first, Beth hated the idea of leaving the city. She wanted to return to her old life and believed that the countryside offered nothing for her. Joe was addicted to his games and struggled to imagine life without technology. Fran lived in silence and rarely communicated. Now all three have changed. The magical adventures have encouraged them to interact with one another and with the natural world. They have discovered that the countryside is not empty or boring. It contains an entire hidden universe. The relationship between Tim and the children also becomes more meaningful. As they think about his childhood connection to the faraway tree, the children begin to wonder why Tim never told them about it. Perhaps he believed the memories were simply childhood fantasies. Perhaps he had forgotten important details over the years. Or perhaps the magical world had disappeared from his life until the family moved to the countryside. Whatever the explanation, the children now understand that their father's decision to move may have been influenced by something deeper than simply wanting to grow tomatoes. His connection to the countryside may be tied to memories he has carried since childhood. Meanwhile, Tim and Polly continue struggling with the failed harvest. They are trying to remain hopeful, but the situation looks increasingly serious. The grandmother is waiting for the business to fail completely, and the farmers who sold the property are also watching. Tim feels responsible for his family's future. He wanted to create a better life, but now his dream seems to be collapsing. Polly supports him, reminding him that their decision was never only about money. Even if the business fails, they have still learned something about themselves. Yet they both understand that losing the farm would be a major blow. The children finally approach the faraway tree again. The sight of the enormous tree gives them renewed hope. They have been through fear, imprisonment, and uncertainty, but the tree represents their connection to the magical world. It is also the route home. They know that somewhere among its branches is a way back to the ordinary world. Their mission is not finished, however, because they must still return to the farm, use the reversal spell, and hope that it works before everything is lost. As they move through the tree, the siblings encounter familiar magical characters once again. Silky is overjoyed to see Fran alive and safe. Their reunion is emotional because Silky knows how dangerous the children's journey has been. Fran's friendship with Silky has become one of the most important relationships in the story. Silky was the first magical being to show Fran kindness, and that kindness helped her rediscover her voice. Now, Fran's courage has grown to the point where she can help save her entire family. The relationship between them demonstrates how a small act of compassion can create consequences far beyond what anyone expects. Moonface is also relieved to see the children return. His emotional connection to Timmy makes their reunion particularly meaningful. The children now know that their father was once part of this magical community, and Moonface's happiness confirms that Tim's childhood adventures were real. The discovery adds another layer to the family's history. The faraway tree is not something that suddenly appeared in the children's lives. It has been waiting in the background of their family's story for years. The children explain that they have the reversal spell, and everyone understands how important it is. But there is little time for celebration. They need to get back to the farm immediately. The magical world may be exciting, but their real-world problem still exists. The spell has to be used in the correct way, and the children must return before the family loses the property and the grandmother takes them away. The journey home becomes a final test of their courage. They have already faced the land of birthdays, the land of spales, and Dame Snap's school. Now they have to cross the magical space between the faraway tree and their countryside home. Every moment feels important. Beth worries that she may have waited too long. Joe keeps encouraging her, reminding her that they have already come this far. Fran remains confident that they will succeed because they are together. Eventually, the children make it back to the ordinary world. The contrast is striking. After everything they have experienced above the clouds, the countryside appears almost peaceful. Yet the children know that something is wrong. The tomato farm is still damaged, and the festival has not gone as planned. Their parents are dealing with disappointment, while the grandmother is preparing to enforce her decision. The children arrive carrying the one thing that could change everything. The reversal spell. Beth is now ready to take responsibility publicly. She knows that the spell is the result of a journey she began because of her own mistake. She does not try to hide what she did. Instead, she is prepared to correct it. This is an important emotional step because Beth's character arc is not simply about learning that magic can be dangerous. It is about learning that growing up means accepting responsibility when your choices hurt others. The children use the reversal spell, hoping that it will restore the tomatoes. At first, there is uncertainty. Nothing seems to happen immediately. Beth becomes nervous, wondering whether the spell has failed or whether her mistake has become permanent. Tim and Polly do not fully understand what the children have been doing, but they are about to witness something extraordinary. The ruined tomato plants begin to change. The damage starts to reverse itself, and the tomatoes are restored. But the restoration is even more impressive than the children expected. The tomatoes do not simply return to their previous condition. They become larger and healthier than before. The farm, which had appeared to be a complete failure, suddenly looks more successful than anyone could have imagined. The reversal spell has not only repaired Beth's mistake, but has transformed the crops into something even better. Tim and Polly are stunned. They cannot understand how their ruined tomatoes could suddenly become healthy again. The children, however, understand exactly what happened. Beth's wish has been reversed. Their family has been given another chance. The relief is enormous, especially for Beth, who finally feels that she has been able to repair the damage she caused. The transformation also changes the grandmother's position. She had arrived expecting the business to fail and had been prepared to take the children back to London. Now the tomato farm is thriving. The business has the potential to become successful, and the grandmother's threat loses its power. Tim and Polly have demonstrated that their dream can work. The farmers who sold the property arrive as well, ready to complete the Thompsons' ownership of the barn. The family has finally earned the right to call the place their home. The villagers gather to celebrate. What began as a desperate attempt to save a failing tomato business becomes a joyful community event. The family's journey from the city to the countryside has reached a turning point. They are no longer strangers trying to survive in an unfamiliar place. They have become part of the village, and their farm has become a symbol of their determination. The children have also become deeply connected to the magical world hidden nearby. Beth's transformation is particularly noticeable during the celebration. She is no longer the angry child who wanted to destroy the family's new life. She has learned that happiness cannot always be found by returning to what is familiar. Sometimes happiness comes from accepting change and helping create something new. Her relationship with Tim and Polly becomes stronger because she now understands the sacrifices they made for the family. Joe also has changed. Technology is no longer the only source of excitement in his life. He has experienced real adventures that no video game could reproduce. Yet his technological knowledge was never portrayed as completely negative. Instead, the story shows that skills developed through technology can be valuable when combined with imagination and real-world cooperation. Joe's gaming experience helped him pilot the magical plane, demonstrating that the problem was not technology itself, but the way people allowed technology to dominate their lives. Fran's journey is perhaps the most emotional of all. She began the story as a child who had been mute for years, isolated from ordinary communication. Her encounter with Silky helped her rediscover her voice, and the magical world gave her a place where she felt accepted. By the end of the adventure, Fran is no longer simply the quiet youngest sibling. She has become a brave member of the team who helped rescue her family. Her voice represents more than speech. It represents confidence, connection, and the freedom to express who she really is. The final celebration brings the ordinary and magical worlds together. Tim and Moonface briefly reunite, creating an emotional connection between Tim's childhood and the adventures of his own children. Moonface sees that Timmy has grown into a father, and Tim is once again connected to a magical world that he may have thought was only a distant childhood memory. The moment suggests that the magic of the Faraway tree is not limited to one generation. It can be passed from parents to children through stories, memories, imagination, and love. The journey has therefore come full circle. The family originally moved to the countryside because Polly left her job after discovering the company's unethical use of hidden cameras, and because Tim wanted to pursue a dream of building a tomato sauce business. Their new home initially seemed like a disaster. The barn had no electricity or running water. The children hated the move, and the future was uncertain. Then Fran discovered the magic Faraway tree, opening the door to a world that transformed the entire family. Through their adventures, the children learned to reconnect with each other. Their parents learned that their new life could truly work. and the family discovered that imagination and nature could bring them closer together. Beth's wish, which once seemed like a way to escape the countryside, ultimately became the event that forced her to understand the value of the family she had taken for granted. Joe's gaming obsession became a useful skill when he needed to pilot the magical plane. Fran's silence became a journey toward finding her voice. Tim's childhood connection to the Faraway tree brought the stories past and present together, and the tomato farm, once nearly destroyed, became more successful than before. The adventure has taught the children that magical worlds are not simply places for entertainment. They are places where choices have consequences and where people discover who they really are. The Faraway tree challenged them repeatedly, but every challenge helped them grow. They learned that courage does not mean having no fear. It means continuing forward even when you are frightened. They learned that mistakes do not have to define a person if that person is willing to admit them and make things right. Most importantly, they learned that family becomes strongest when its members support one another instead of trying to escape their problems alone. As the village celebration continues, the Thompson family finally has the peaceful beginning they had hoped for when they first arrived. The barn is becoming their permanent home. The tomato business has a future, and the children have developed a new relationship with the countryside. Yet the magic faraway tree remains nearby, waiting in the woodland. Its branches still reach toward the clouds, and its magical lands continue to change. The children know that their adventure may not truly be over, because the tree is a place where another extraordinary world could appear at any time. The story ultimately leaves the Thompson family in a much happier place than where it began. They arrived in the countryside, divided by different expectations, and frustrated by change. They finish the journey united by a shared experience that none of them will ever forget. The magic did not simply solve their problems, it forced them to confront them. It gave Beth the opportunity to take responsibility, Joe the opportunity to use his talents differently, Fran the courage to find her voice, and Tim and Polly the chance to see that their dream could become a reality. And somewhere between the ordinary farm and the magical tree, the family discovers the real meaning of the adventure. Sometimes the greatest magic is not found in spells, enchanted lands, or impossible creatures, but in the moment when a family finally learns to listen to one another, trust one another, and face the future together. After the children return from their dangerous adventure through the magical lands, the Thompson family enters a period in which their lives begin to change in ways that none of them could have predicted. The countryside that initially seemed like a terrible mistake slowly becomes a place where the family can rediscover itself. Tim and Polly continue working on the property, repairing the old barn, organizing the farm equipment, and preparing the land for their tomato growing business. Their work is exhausting because almost everything around them needs attention, but the difference is that they are now doing it together. The children are no longer completely opposed to the idea of living in the countryside. Their experiences with the magic faraway tree have shown them that there is far more to their new home than they originally understood. The forest that once seemed like an ordinary stretch of woodland has become a gateway to an extraordinary world, and the children have begun to see their surroundings with a completely different sense of curiosity. Beth's attitude toward the countryside changes gradually rather than instantly. At the beginning of the story, she was convinced that moving away from the city had destroyed the life she loved. She missed the familiar streets, the comforts of technology, and the world she had grown up in. She blamed Tim and Polly for making a decision that affected the entire family. Her anger was one of the main reasons she eventually made the careless wish in the land of birthdays. But after seeing the consequences of that wish, Beth begins to understand her parents in a new way. She realizes that Tim and Polly were not trying to make their children miserable. They were trying to build a different kind of life, one based on independence, family, nature, and honest work. Polly had already sacrificed her career because she refused to accept the unethical decision to place hidden cameras inside her company's smart refrigerator. Tim had given up the comfort and predictability of city life because he believed the family could create something meaningful together. Beth begins to appreciate these sacrifices. Joe also starts changing as the family settles into the countryside. His obsession with technology does not disappear completely, but his experiences inside the faraway tree teach him that real life can provide a kind of excitement that a screen cannot reproduce. His journey through the magical lands becomes a real adventure in which he has to make decisions, solve problems, and cooperate with his sisters. His video game knowledge even becomes unexpectedly useful when the children discover the magical aeroplane. Joe is able to approach the controls with confidence because he is accustomed to virtual flying and game mechanics. The movie therefore does not simply portray technology as something bad. Instead, it shows that technology can be useful when it remains a tool rather than becoming the entire world a person lives in. Joe begins to find a healthier balance between imagination, technology, and real experiences. Fran's transformation is even more significant. Before meeting Silky, Fran had been mute for years. Her inability to speak had created a distance between her and the people around her. Even though her family loved her deeply, her encounter with Silky becomes the beginning of something extraordinary. Silky's kindness gives Fran confidence, and the magical world becomes a place where Fran feels accepted and understood. As her adventures continue, she becomes more willing to express herself. The fact that she eventually participates in the family song in the Land of Spales is especially meaningful. Fran is no longer defined by her silence. Her voice becomes a symbol of the confidence she has gained. She is able to communicate, participate, and take an active role in helping her siblings. The Faraway Tree therefore becomes much more than a place for adventures. For the children, it becomes a place of personal growth. Every magical land teaches them something different. The Land of Goodies shows them that something that looks perfect can still be dangerous. The Land of Birthdays teaches them that wishes have consequences. The Land of Know-It-Alls shows them that knowledge can provide solutions to seemingly impossible problems. The Land of Spales demonstrates the importance of sincerity and family connection. Dame Snap's school teaches them that authority and rules can sometimes be manipulated when people refuse to think creatively. Through all these experiences, the children become more mature. Meanwhile, Tim and Polly are determined to make their tomato business succeed. The farm is not simply a business project anymore. It has become the symbol of the new life they want to create. Tim puts enormous energy into growing the tomatoes, while Polly brings her intelligence and practical experience to the project. Although she has left the technology company behind, her skills as an inventor and problem solver remain valuable. The couple begin to realize that building something together gives them a sense of purpose that their previous city life did not provide. They are not merely escaping their old lives, they are creating a new one. The farmers who sold the property remain an important part of the family's situation. Because the barn is in such poor condition, they had agreed to give the Thompsons a few weeks to repair it before requiring them to complete the £20,000 purchase. This arrangement means that the family is working under pressure from the beginning. If they cannot make the property function properly and establish a viable business, they risk losing the place. Tim sees the challenge as motivation. He believes that if the family can turn the neglected barn into a successful farm, they will prove that their dream was worth pursuing. The children gradually become involved in the work as well. Their time outdoors gives them opportunities to experience ordinary responsibilities that they rarely had in the city. They can see how food is grown rather than simply buying it from a store. They can watch their parents work toward a shared goal. They begin to understand that success does not happen instantly. It requires patience, cooperation, and persistence. These lessons become increasingly important as the story moves toward the tomato business's grand opening. The family's growing closeness is interrupted by the arrival of Beth's grandmother. Beth had secretly written to her, asking her to come and take the children away from the countryside. At the time, Beth believed her grandmother could provide the solution she wanted. She imagined returning to London and getting her old life back. But when her grandmother actually arrives, the situation becomes much more complicated. She is Polly's mother and is described as unscrupulous, with a strong connection to London and the world the Thompsons were trying to leave behind. Her arrival brings pressure rather than comfort. The grandmother makes it clear that she does not trust the family's new plan. She sees the countryside lifestyle and the tomato business as uncertain, and she is prepared to intervene if the experiment fails. She gives Tim and Polly a deadline. The tomato sauce business must succeed, otherwise she will take the children back to London. This threat puts enormous pressure on the parents. They now have to prove that their dream is more than an impulsive decision. The success of the business could determine whether the family remains together in the countryside. Tim responds by deciding to make the business launch a major event. He plans a festival for the grand opening, hoping to bring the village together and demonstrate that the Thompsons have created something worthwhile. The festival becomes the family's target. Everything they have done since arriving at the property seems to lead toward this moment. The barn has been repaired as much as possible. The farm has been organized, and the tomatoes have been growing. Tim begins to believe that the business might actually succeed. Polly shares his optimism, although she understands the risks. She has already experienced the consequences of choosing principles over professional security, and she knows that success is never guaranteed. Still, she believes in Tim and in the family. Their new life has not been easy, but it has brought them closer together. The children are also becoming more involved, and for Polly that is perhaps the greatest achievement of all. The family is spending time together in a way they rarely did before. Beth watches this transformation with mixed feelings. She has started to appreciate the life her parents are building, but she also knows a secret that nobody else knows. She remembers the wish she made in the land of birthdays. At the time, she had not understood the seriousness of magical wishes. She had simply wanted the tomato business to fail so that her parents would give up and take the family back to London. But now that she sees how much the business means to Tim and Polly, the wish begins to frighten her. Beth does not immediately tell her parents what she has done. She is afraid of disappointing them and worried about what will happen if they discover that the disaster is connected to her. Her silence creates an emotional burden. She has to watch her parents work toward a goal while knowing that she may have secretly placed that goal in danger. The longer she keeps the secret, the more difficult it becomes to face the truth. Joe and Fran become important sources of support for Beth. They have experienced the magical world together, and they understand how dangerous wishes can be. They know that Beth did not make the wish with the intention of destroying her family's happiness. She was unhappy and wanted to escape a situation she did not understand. Nevertheless, the consequences are real. The siblings begin to understand that fixing the problem will require more than simply apologizing. They need to find a way to reverse the magic itself. This is where their earlier experiences inside the faraway tree become valuable. The children remember the unusual inhabitants and the information they received during their adventures. Dame Washalot had mentioned a land of spales, and the children realize that such a place might offer a solution. They also know about the great knoll in the land of know-it-alls. The magical world is beginning to feel less like a collection of random adventures and more like a network of possibilities. Somewhere among those lands, there may be an answer to their problem. As the grand opening approaches, the emotional pressure becomes intense. Tim is excited because he believes the festival could be the beginning of a successful future. Polly is proud of everything they have accomplished. The grandmother is waiting to see whether the business can survive. The farmers are also interested in the outcome because the family's success will determine whether the Thompsons can complete the purchase of the property. Meanwhile, Beth is increasingly anxious because she knows that her wish could destroy everything. The day of the grand opening finally arrives. The family has prepared the farm as best they can, and the village gathers to see the result of their hard work. Tim is hopeful, perhaps more hopeful than he has been since arriving in the countryside. He wants to prove that his dream was not foolish. Polly stands beside him, ready to support him whatever happens. The children are there as well, but Beth's excitement is overshadowed by fear. Then the tomatoes begin to fail. The crops that had appeared healthy suddenly become rotten and unusable. The transformation is devastating because it happens at the worst possible moment. The grand opening is supposed to demonstrate the success of the business, but instead it becomes evidence of failure. Tim cannot understand what has happened. Polly is shocked. The villagers watch as the family's dream appears to collapse. The grandmother now has every reason to believe that the business cannot succeed. For Beth, however, there is no mystery. She knows exactly what has happened. Her wish has become reality. The emotional weight of the moment is enormous because Beth finally understands that she got what she asked for, but not what she wanted. She wished for the business to fail because she believed failure would simply send the family back to London. She did not think about the work her parents had invested, the money they had risked, the farmers who had trusted them, or the emotional meaning the business had for Tim and Polly. She had thought only about escaping her own unhappiness. Now she sees the full consequences of that selfish decision. Beth's guilt becomes overwhelming. She watches Tim standing beside the ruined crops and realizes that her father is not angry because he lost a business opportunity. He is hurt because something he believed in has collapsed. Polly is also devastated. The family has worked together for weeks, and suddenly all of that effort appears worthless. Beth understands that her wish has harmed the very people she loves. This realization changes Beth permanently. Instead of continuing to blame her parents, she accepts responsibility. She knows that she cannot undo the past, but she can try to make things right. She tells Joe and Fran that they need to return to the magic faraway tree. Their goal is no longer simply to explore. They must find a reversal spell and save the farm. The siblings remember that the land of know-it-alls may contain information about how to reach the land of spells. Their plan begins there. They will travel through the faraway tree, find the great knoll, learn how to reach the land of spells, obtain the necessary spell, and return before the family's situation becomes irreversible. The journey will be dangerous, but Beth is determined to take responsibility for her mistake. Their decision also shows how much the three children have grown closer. At the beginning, Beth was frustrated with Joe and Fran as much as she was frustrated with their parents. Joe was absorbed in games, and Fran was isolated by her silence. Now they function as a team. Joe does not condemn Beth for her mistake. Fran does not abandon her. Instead, they agree to help her. Their response demonstrates the family's developing understanding that mistakes should be confronted together. Children return to the magic faraway tree, and their journey takes them once again into the magical world. The tree seems familiar now, but the circumstances are completely different. Earlier, they climbed it because they were curious. Now they climb it because their family's future depends on them. This difference gives the adventure a stronger emotional purpose. Their first destination becomes the land of know-it-alls. There, the children meet the great knoll and explain that they need to. Before, the farm suddenly has an even greater chance of succeeding. Tim and Polly are astonished by what they see, while Beth finally experiences the relief of knowing that she has repaired the damage she caused. The farmers arrive to complete the Thompsons' ownership of the barn. The family's dream of staying in the countryside is now secure. The grandmother's plan is also defeated because the business has succeeded. She can no longer claim that Tim and Polly have failed or that the children must be taken back to London. The village celebrates the family's success, transforming what could have been a disastrous day into a joyful festival. Tim and Polly finally see the reward for all their hard work. The children stand beside them, knowing that they played a role in saving the farm. Beth, in particular, understands that the success is meaningful because it came after she faced her mistake, rather than running away from it. The celebration also provides an opportunity for Tim and Moonface to briefly reunite. The moment is filled with emotional significance because it connects Tim's childhood to his children's present. Moonface remembers Timmy, while Tim is once again brought into contact with the magical world that shaped part of his early life. The reunion suggests that the magic faraway tree has been part of the family's story for much longer than the children ever realized. By this point, the Thompson family has undergone a complete transformation. They began the movie divided by technology, frustration, and disagreement over their future. They now stand together in a community they once considered completely unfamiliar. The children have rediscovered their imagination. Tim and Polly have created a successful business, and the family has found a new sense of belonging. The most important lesson of Beth's journey is that getting what you think you want is not always the same as getting what will make you happy. Beth believed that returning to the city would solve everything. Her wish seemed like a simple solution to a complicated problem, but when the wish actually came true, She realized that she had been looking at her situation from only one perspective. The countryside had given her family difficulties, but it had also given them opportunities they never would have discovered in the city. The magic faraway tree becomes the symbol of that transformation. It represents imagination, possibility, and the unexpected paths that life can take. The children never planned to discover it, but finding it changed everything. The tree introduced them to magical lands, but more importantly, it introduced them to different versions of themselves. By the end of this stage of the story, the Thompson family is no longer simply trying to survive in the countryside. They have begun to belong there. The farm is thriving, the children are closer, and the magical world remains nearby. The family has learned that change can be frightening without necessarily being bad, and that sometimes leaving behind a familiar life can lead to something far more meaningful. The journey through the faraway tree has also shown that magic works best when it is connected to human qualities such as kindness, courage, honesty, and family love. Fran's kindness towards Silky opened the door to the magical world. Beth's selfish wish caused a crisis, but her willingness to accept responsibility helped resolve it. Joe's imagination allowed him to contribute in unexpected ways. Tim's childhood connection to the tree helped unite two generations. Every major event has been connected to the choices the characters make. As the family celebrates their success, the earlier problems seem far away. The broken barn has become a home. The failed tomato harvest has become a thriving crop. The children who once wanted to return to the city now have a reason to remain. And the magical tree that first appeared mysterious and frightening has become a cherished part of their new life. The story ultimately shows that a family does not become stronger because life becomes easier. It becomes stronger because its members learn how to face difficult moments together. The Thompsons experienced uncertainty, conflict, disappointment, magical danger, and the consequences of a careless decision. Yet each challenge brought them closer. Their journey through the magical lands gave them experiences that they could never have gained from their ordinary city life. And as the village celebrates the success of the tomato farm, the magic faraway tree remains standing in the nearby woodland. Its enormous branches reaching toward the sky and its ever-changing magical lands waiting above the clouds. The children now know that the tree is not simply a strange place in the forest. It is a doorway to adventure, a connection to their father's childhood, and a reminder that imagination can survive even in a world dominated by technology. For the Thompson family, the greatest adventure has already changed them forever, and the life they once feared has become the life they are finally ready to embrace. After the incredible events surrounding the tomato farm, the Thompson family finally begins to experience the peaceful life they had hoped for when they first moved to the countryside. The old barn that once looked almost impossible to live in has gradually become a real home, and the surrounding land has transformed into a functioning tomato farm. Tim and Polly are proud of what they have achieved, not simply because the business is beginning to succeed, but because the project has brought their family closer together. When they first arrived, everyone seemed to want something different. Tim wanted a fresh start and dreamed of making tomato sauce. Polly wanted a life built around honesty and independence. Beth wanted to return to the city. Joe wanted his technology, and Fran struggled to communicate with the world around her. Now those differences have begun to disappear. The family has experienced something extraordinary together, and their adventures around the magic faraway tree have changed the way they see each other. For Beth, the change is particularly important because she now understands the consequences of her actions. Earlier, she had made a selfish wish in the land of birthdays because she believed the easiest solution to her unhappiness was to make her parents' new business fail. She never expected the wish to become so destructive. When the tomatoes actually turned rotten, Beth finally understood that even a thoughtless decision can hurt people you love. Her journey to find the reversal spell forced her to confront that mistake instead of hiding from it. By the time the spell restored the tomatoes, Beth had learned one of the most important lessons of her entire childhood. Responsibility means accepting what you have done and trying to make things right. She no longer sees her parents' dream as something being forced upon her. She begins to recognize it as something they created for the whole family. Relationship between Beth and Tim also becomes warmer. Tim had always wanted his children to share his enthusiasm for the countryside, but he could not force them to love it. Instead, his patience gives Beth the opportunity to discover the value of her new surroundings for herself. The fact that Tim once visited the magic Faraway tree as a child makes their relationship even more meaningful. Beth now knows that the strange tree is connected to her father's past. She realizes that the place she initially considered boring or insignificant actually holds memories that shaped the man she knows as her father. This discovery gives her a new appreciation for Tim. She begins to understand that parents are not simply parents. They were children once, with their own adventures, dreams, fears, and secrets. Joe's transformation is quieter but equally important. At the beginning, he is deeply attached to technology and spends much of his time absorbed in games. The countryside seems like a nightmare for someone accustomed to constant entertainment and digital stimulation. But the magic Faraway tree gives Joe something he never expected, an adventure that feels more exciting than any game. He encounters strange lands, magical creatures, impossible landscapes, and real dangers. More importantly, he becomes an active participant rather than a passive observer. When the children discover the magical aeroplane, Joe's gaming experience becomes genuinely useful. He knows how to understand controls, react quickly, and remain focused under pressure. This teaches him that the skills he developed through technology are not necessarily worthless. The problem was not that Joe enjoyed games. The problem was that he had forgotten there was an entire world beyond the screen. Fran's journey remains perhaps the most touching transformation in the story. When she first meets Silky, Fran has been mute for years, and communication has become difficult for her. Yet a simple act of kindness changes everything. Fran returns Silky's lost purse instead of ignoring it, and Silky responds with gratitude and friendship. That relationship opens the door to the magical world. Fran's encounters with Silky, Moonface, the Saucepan Man, Mr. Watsy-Snom, and Dame Washalot gradually give her confidence. She begins to express herself more openly and discovers that people are willing to listen to her. Her role in the family song in the Land of Spales becomes an especially important moment because she uses her voice to help her siblings. What began as a struggle to communicate becomes a story about discovering confidence and finding one's place within a family. The magical inhabitants of the Faraway tree also become emotionally connected to the Thompson children. Silky sees Fran as a true friend rather than simply another human child visiting the tree. Moonface becomes especially attached to the entire family after discovering Tim's connection to the magical world. When Moonface realizes that the children are Timmy's children, he understands that the friendship he once had with a young boy has somehow continued into another generation. For Moonface, this is not simply an interesting coincidence. It is a reminder that friendships and memories can survive for years, even when people believe that a particular chapter of their lives has ended. The revelation about Tim's childhood also gives the Faraway tree a deeper meaning. Before the children discovered it, Tim had apparently kept his childhood experiences in the past, whether he remembered them as magical adventures or distant childhood memories. The tree remained part of his personal history. His children have now rediscovered it independently, creating a strange circle between generations. Tim once explored the tree as a child, and now his own children are doing the same. The magical world has therefore become a bridge between their childhoods. It connects the father he was with the father he has become. At the same time, the family continues to focus on their tomato sauce business. The restored tomatoes are larger and healthier than before, giving Tim and Polly a new sense of confidence. Their original plan had been risky, but now they have proof that it can work. The village has witnessed their determination, and the farmers who sold them the barn are satisfied enough to complete the ownership. The £20,000 purchase that once seemed uncertain can finally be completed. The family now has a permanent home in the countryside, and the tomato business has a genuine chance to become successful. Polly's journey is also important because her decision to leave her technology company initially caused the entire family to change direction. She had discovered that the company had secretly added hidden cameras to her smart refrigerator design in order to spy on customers. Instead of accepting the decision simply because it might benefit her career, Polly resigned. That choice demonstrates the moral values that guide her character. She is willing to give up professional success rather than participate in something she believes is wrong. Her decision eventually leads the family to the countryside, where Tim's dream of growing tomatoes becomes possible. In this way, the entire adventure begins with an ethical choice. Polly refuses to compromise her principles, and that decision ultimately places the family on the path toward the magic faraway tree. The contrast between the family's old life and new life becomes increasingly clear. In the city, technology was everywhere, but the family was emotionally disconnected. Joe was absorbed in screens, Beth was frustrated, and Fran struggled with communication. In the countryside, they initially face inconvenience and uncertainty, but they begin spending more time together. They work with their hands, explore the woods, grow food, and experience things directly. The movie does not suggest that modern technology is automatically harmful. Instead, it suggests that technology becomes a problem when it replaces imagination, family interaction, and real experiences. The Thompson children learn that there is a balance between the digital world and the natural world. And that brings us to the end of our complete story, explanation and review of The Magic Faraway Tree. This movie takes us on a wonderful fantasy adventure filled with magical lands, mysterious characters, family challenges, humor, emotions, and important life lessons. What begins as a difficult move from the city to the countryside eventually becomes an unforgettable journey for Beth, Joe, and Fran. Along the way, they discover the magic faraway tree, meet fascinating magical characters, face dangerous situations, and learn that every choice has consequences. Beth's journey especially teaches us the importance of taking responsibility for our mistakes, while the entire family learns the value of love, teamwork, imagination, and staying together during difficult times. The movie also reminds us that technology can never completely replace real-world experiences, family connections, and the power of imagination. Overall, The Magic Faraway Tree is a charming fantasy adventure that combines childhood wonder with meaningful family themes. If you enjoyed this complete explanation and review, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for more movie story explanations and reviews. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.